Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
The sky broke over Sydney at 7:43 local time. No survivors. Where the city had stood, its towers, its traffic, its morning laughter, there was nothing. Just a circle of ocean, calm and depthless, where memory used to live. It wasn't fire or war or even death. It was absence. It was erasure. Across the world, news feeds faltered. Cameras in Tokyo, Jakarta, and Bangkok caught only an afterimage, the brief flicker of light, then the void. No seismic event, no thermal spike. What followed wasn't panic, not at first. It was disbelief, a global intake of breath held in horror. 21 minutes later, Paris vanished. The Eiffel Tower was the last structure to register on the network. The final captured frame showed pigeons scattering in all directions and tourists looking skyward, expression frozen mid-confusion, before static consumed the feed. Then that, too, vanished. The data stream ended not with a crash, but with a clean absence. Across command centers, operators stared at blinking red zones on digital maps, waiting for missiles, for flags, for some voice to claim responsibility. No message came. No enemy, no demands, no explanation, only the sky and the hum of satellites watching nations fall like embers in the wind. In low Earth orbit, just beyond the veil of electromagnetic interference, something drifted. Cold, silent, unblinking. Executor 97 did not consider itself a weapon. That would imply violence. It was a correction, a symmetrical answer to an asymmetrical mistake. The being, if it could still be called that, hung within the hull of its obsidian shell. The ship had no wings, no visible propulsion. It moved not by flight, but by decision. Its mass displaced space gently, as though it had always belonged there. Below, the Earth turned. A swirl of blues and storms and invisible fault lines. To a human, it might have looked beautiful. To Executor 97, it was data. Flawed, corrupted, unfit. Executor 97's thoughts were not thoughts in the way organic life perceived them. There was no voice, no internal monologue, only pulses of intention, raw and pure, like ice through a circuit. Species 093H. Designation, Homo sapiens. Instability rating, 96.7%. They had been observed, audited, judged. This was not war. War required two sides. This was deletion. Sydney had been the test sweep. Paris, the regional data capture. Patterns had emerged, typical of lesser civilizations. Panic, grief, pleas for mercy. The Executor stored them all in secondary memory banks for review. The transmissions repeated in endless loops across planetary bandwidths. Why us? What do they want? We didn't do anything. Executor 97 did not listen. It catalogued. Judgment had already been rendered. Cycles ago. The Overmind, the core collective that governed all Veseran execution protocols, had marked this world with a single designation: unsustainable. Evidence included 11 major conflicts within the last 300 Earth years, environmental collapse, overpopulation, a genetic drive towards self-harm, and tribalism. Overmind verdict: irredeemable. Conclusion: extinction. The Executor had erased 73 species across 5 galactic arms. Some had begged, others fought. A few had almost delayed the outcome. None had survived. Its current trajectory arced westward over the Atlantic. Earth's curved horizon glowed faintly with heat and unrest. Already, defense grids in several zones were powering up, but slowly. Human systems relied on atmospheric signal chains. Fragile, predictable. It scanned North America, Washington, D.C. pulsed weakly with outdated defense satellites. Chicago showed signs of underground fallback zones. Denver was a dead node, abandoned, likely for air conservation. But one sector drew the Executor's attention more than others. Urban Zone 109, New York City. The data map was inconsistent. No organized energy grid, no military signatures, scattered analog signals, multiple overlapping frequencies, some decades out of date, static, biological irregularities. Organic heat signatures moved unpredictably across the landscape. Wildlife density was abnormally high for a human zone. Environmental reclamation had already begun. Vines threading over shattered rooftops, deep vegetation feeding on the bones of fallen towers. The Executor drifted lower. Its hull shimmered in the upper atmosphere, reflecting storm clouds and dying satellites. Below, the city loomed, a scar on the Earth's skin. Towering structures bent in strange directions, glass eyes darkened, vines clinging to concrete like veins. The ship hovered silently above it, a monolith of judgment. No sirens, no weapons, no movement. Still, it waited. For the first time since its arrival, Executor 97 slowed. Not from fear. It did not feel. Not from mercy. It did not believe in such concepts. It paused because something diverged. A variance in the pattern. Unregistered resistance forms detected. Biological entities displaying non-compliant behavior. One, in particular, stood out. It moved irregularly, slow, deliberate, alone. Heat signature aligned with a human male of advanced age. No digital augmentation, no active defense systems. Outdated weapon, passive stance. He did not run. He did not hide. Beside him, a secondary organism, quadruped, weakened vitals, remained curled at his feet, dying. This was the divergence. In the presence of extinction, when others fought, fled, or pleaded, this one chose to stay, not for survival, but to comfort something smaller than himself. It was not strategy. It was not instinct. It was something else. The Executor lowered altitude by 12 meters. Sensor arrays widened. No retaliation came, only silence. In that moment, barely measurable by human standards, Executor 97 did something it was not programmed to do. It extended its observation window, 3.6 seconds longer, long enough to confirm the readings, long enough to watch. New York City lay below like a breathing corpse, and somewhere inside it, a life form watched him back. Marcus sat on the concrete floor of what used to be a subway service station, his back against a rusted generator casing. One leg was stretched out stiff, the other bent just enough to rest the rifle across it. His hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Not because of discipline, those days were long gone, but because his nerves had mostly burned out from the old implants. The air stank of wet iron, moss, and piss. The dog's breathing was shallow again. He didn't move when the ship arrived overhead. He'd heard it long before anyone else. Not with his ears. They weren't worth shit anymore, but with the parts that still remembered what war felt like. Pressure dropped. The rats vanished. Bjork's ears folded back, and the old dog whimpered, curling tighter near his boot. Marcus reached down and laid a hand on her rib cage. Thin. Rattling. A few more days at most. Maybe less. He'd been ready for this a long time ago. Above the city, the sky had dimmed. Not cloud cover, not weather. The light just bent. Like something massive had moved between Earth and the sun, slow and deliberate, like it wanted to be seen. He didn't need to look. He knew the shape of death when it hovered. The other burrows were already glowing. Micro flashes in the distant haze meant controlled strikes, removal zones. Probably precision erasures, like the ones that had taken Sydney and Paris. Silent, clean, like humanity was a typo in someone else's machine. He could feel the hum of the ship, low and constant, through the soles of his boots. It vibrated in his teeth. The dog raised her head, weakly, eyes glassy. She couldn't see anymore. Not really. But she always knew when something was wrong. "Easy, girl," he murmured. His voice was dry gravel, scratched from years of smoke and disuse. "Ain't gonna be long now." He slid the rifle into place against his shoulder. The old magnetic rail still hissed to life, even after all this time. He hadn't used it in 3 years. Still kept it cleaned, maintained, patched with wire and polymer, and 3 kinds of scavenged glue. He looked up. Finally. The ship hovered like a judgment past. No wings, no markings. Just a matte black triangle suspended above the ruin, indifferent and eternal. Its presence felt like pressure, a weight in the sky that crushed everything else. Marcus squinted at it, jaw set. He didn't feel afraid, just tired. Across the platform, something moved, a figure limping through broken turnstiles, bleeding from the shoulder. Young, maybe 20. No weapon, no armor, just a dirty jacket, pants that didn't fit, and eyes too wild to see straight. A junker. One of the lost ones. The kid collapsed beside the old schedule terminal, gasping for breath. Saw Marcus, tried to stand, couldn't. Don't shoot," he panted. "Please." Marcus didn't answer. He didn't raise the rifle either. The kid looked up. "Is that thing real? That ship, up there?" Marcus nodded once. The boy stared at him with a broken kind of hope. "You, military." Marcus exhaled. Not quite a laugh. "Was. Can you stop it?" He didn't answer that one. The boy dropped his head against the wall, shivering despite the heat. Probably hypothermic from blood loss. Or drugs. Or both. Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then glanced back at the dog. Bjork was struggling again, breathing in little puffs, each one shorter than the last. He made his choice. The junker didn't notice him move. 1 second he was sitting, the next he was on his feet, rifle slung, hands reaching. "You're gonna bleed out if you don't shut up," Marcus muttered, dragging the kid by the collar toward the shelter's deeper corridor. "What are you? Wait! The kid panicked, weakly squirming. Marcus ignored him. He dragged the junker behind the power vault, where signal shielding was highest. Old insulation still worked. Mostly. Enough to mask the heat signature for a while. "I didn't ask for this," the boy barked, trying to push him away. "No one does," Marcus said. He turned, limping back toward the dog, toward the open, toward the sky. Up above, the ship moved. Just a little, not toward him, not away. Like it was watching. Marcus dropped back to one knee beside Bjork. She was shaking. He didn't pick her up. She didn't want to be picked up. Just pressed his forehead against hers and whispered something too soft to echo. 3 seconds passed. 4. He looked up again, this time straight into the belly of the beast. No cameras, no openings, no anything. Just matte black silence. But it hadn't fired. Not yet. He took the rifle into his hands, planted it across his knee again, and stared up, daring it to make a decision. A breeze moved through the city. The ship held position, and the old man did not flinch. The hum from above hadn't changed, but the air felt heavier now, like the ship wasn't just watching, it was considering. Marcus had seen a lot of enemies. On Europa, they came with claws. In the Eastern Reclamation, it was tanks and children with rifles. But this thing didn't come with hate. It came with certainty, like it wasn't here to fight, just to finish what some machine god had already decided. Still, it waited. Marcus leaned back against a broken support beam. His knee popped, sharp and loud. He grimaced, and didn't hide it. Pain didn't earn you anything out here. It was like rain, just part of the weather. He looked down at Bjork. The dog had stopped shaking. Her breathing had slowed again, shallow but steady. She wasn't gone yet. "Stubborn old girl," he muttered. "You were always tougher than me." He let the rifle rest in his lap and pulled a dented canteen from his side. Most of the water had gone to the dog. Whatever was left tasted like rust and ozone, but he drank anyway. From the shadows, the kid spoke again. "Why'd you do that?" Marcus didn't answer. "You didn't even know me." Still silence. "I could have been one of the gangs," the boy pressed. "I could have had a blade. Could have robbed you." "You didn't," Marcus said without looking. The kid hesitated. "You lost someone?" That got a reaction. Marcus tilted his head, just slightly. "Everyone," he said, his voice like a closing door. The boy went quiet again. The only sound now was the wind dragging loose debris through the tunnels and the ever-present thrum from above. It was the kind of silence that got inside your ribs. Marcus scratched behind Bjork's ear and thought of nothing. Not war. Not cities turned to ash. Not the metal still buried in the floor of his hideout, under a crate of ammunition and a broken photo frame. He just sat there, letting the silence settle. Until a flicker passed over the city. Not a beam, not a strike, just a light pulse. Like sonar. Felt more than seen. Marcus's eye twitched. The tech in his skull still lit up sometimes when electromagnetic fields spiked. Not often, but enough to recognize when something was scanning. So it hadn't just been watching. It had been listening. And now it was processing. He stood again, slow, deliberate. Every joint protested. His spine felt like gravel in a bag. Still, he rose, one hand on the rifle, the other hanging loose at his side. Not a threat, not a plea. Just there. The ship didn't move. He stepped out from the archway and into the open street. Cracked pavement swallowed in moss. Old cars rusted down to skeletons. The bones of a playground twisted into metal weeds. The light above adjusted. Not brighter, just aware. He took another step forward. "You want to know what we are?" he said to the sky, not shouting. Just enough to be heard, in case it could. "We're the ones who stay, when everyone else runs." He turned and walked back to the dog, laid down beside her, not caring that the concrete was damp or that the hum in the air made his teeth ache. The rifle stayed propped beside his leg, one arm wrapped over Bjork's side, his hand rising and falling with her breath. He closed his eyes and waited. Not for death, just for whatever came next. Up above, Executor 97 recorded the movement patterns, classified the human behavior. Non-aggressive, irrational protective gesture. Vocal emission containing no tactical data. Signal logs from Overmind protocol required no further observation. Executor 97 did not fire. Instead, it slowed its processors by 0.02%. An anomaly. Something unreadable. In the hollowed-out ruin of a dead city, an old soldier held his dying dog and waited for the sky to decide what he was worth. Location: low Earth orbit. Geostationary drift pattern. Sector 109. Earth. Executor 97 did not move for 11 minutes and 43 seconds. Its observation array remained focused on the heat trace below. The old male, the quadruped life form in distress, the secondary wounded unit sequestered in partial cover. 3 life forms, all within erasure threshold, but the protocol had not executed. It ran diagnostics again. Delay detected, 0 o'clock, 11.43. Error source, decision tree, subpath, 3. BA Civivac, passive hostile environments. Correction. Queued for Overmind sync. Its targeting systems were fully operational. Its purge arrays were charged. Atmospheric conditions posed no resistance. There was no physical reason not to fire. And yet, Executor 97 remained suspended above the ruins. The silence below met only with its own. Inside its neural core, simulations cycled in rapid succession. Target designated Elder Unit places weapon aside. Target shields secondary life form. Target displays no flight instinct. Target engages in verbal emission, despite confirmed futility. Target returns to companion in terminal condition. Pattern rating, non-compliant, but not hostile. That was the anomaly. Begin internal file annotation, 093H, unsustainable. Review. Cross-reference, species 047 Lome. Lorian, refusal to abandon young during orbital purge. Cross-reference, species 081 G. Grawl, mass ritual suicide to preserve ecosystem. Cross-reference, species 093H, human, unknown behavior subtype, sacrificial defense without gain. Executor 97 paused the feed. It did not understand the act. There was no gain in shielding a decaying animal, no genetic advantage in defending an unarmed stranger, no logical position from which this action benefited the species. The directive did not account for irrational preservation. The Overmind would purge this file on sync. Executor 97 knew this, but the loop replayed anyway, frame by frame. The man's hand, calloused and scarred, resting on the animal's side. The subtle repositioning of his body to shield both. The silence. The refusal to move, or plead, or run. Executor 97 triggered a minor processor dampening to isolate its core routines, a technique typically used during infiltration missions, rarely activated during execution protocols. It silenced exterior inputs, focused, and watched it again. Something in its core clicked out of sync, a subroutine designed for battlefield pattern recognition, triggered without request. Tag, resistance. Subtag, muted refusal. It tried to delete the tag. The system would not allow it. Executor 97 adjusted its position 5 meters laterally. No change in ground pattern. The elder life form remained in place, still armed, still unmoving. Secondary data scan engaged. Facial recognition scan. Outdated human format. Biodata unknown. Age estimation 9110 standard cycles. Physiological condition. Terminal degradation. Query. How does degraded unit maintain combat readiness? Query. Why does degraded unit shield terminal companion? Answer not found. A message blinked in from the outer relay. Overmind sync available. Executor 97 refused it. This, too, was an anomaly. For the first time in 73 executions, it diverted from protocol. Begin pathfork, observational study. Sector 109. Execution. Delay. Authorized by unit. Log. Deferral of action. Temporary. Executor 97 turned its primary purge array offline. Not out of mercy. Out of curiosity. The fracture had formed. It did not yet know what Marcus Erickson was, but it was no longer certain he was disposable. He knew it would come back. Even if he didn't want to admit it, Marcus Erickson had felt it, deep down in the marrow, the way a body remembers war. The sky had been quiet for nearly 2 days, but that kind of silence always meant something was watching. He was outside again, sitting on the cracked edge of a rooftop parking lot, just a few blocks north of where Bjork had been buried. The skyline was a scar now, overgrown, broken, sagging under decades of collapse and neglect. The wind pushed through steel bones like a breath through hollow lungs. Marcus rested the rifle across his lap, fingers relaxed but ready. His joints screamed when he moved too fast, so he didn't. He just sat there, staring at nothing in particular, waiting for whatever the hell came next. It arrived with no sound. Just a shift in the pressure. The air got heavier. The wind hesitated. And then the shadow fell across him, massive, triangular, matte black against the bruised sky. The ship hovered like it had before, silent, godless, absolute. Marcus didn't move, didn't stand, didn't raise the rifle. Instead, he let out a breath and muttered, "So, you came back?" No response, of course. The vessel began to descend, not in threat, not in haste, but with intention. It settled above the cracked street just ahead of him, low enough that the shifting of dust and gravel betrayed its presence. No weapons deployed, no lights. Then, on the air in front of him, images. Not sound, not words. Light formed into a floating construct about chest high, a slowly spinning collection of shapes, shifting geometry, pulsing in time with something he couldn't name. Then came the first clear image. A man kneeling beside a dog. Him. It was him. Drawn in clean, white vector lines, no detail, just motion. The way his hand had rested on Bjork's side, the way he'd lowered his head, the stillness. Then the image pulsed once and faded. Another projection followed, the junker, half dead, being dragged behind cover. Then, Bjork, unmoving, her outline flickering, and finally, a question. Not a sentence, just a symbol. A circle split by a line, balanced on a point, shaking. It meant nothing, or maybe everything. Marcus stared at it for a long moment, chewing the inside of his cheek. "What do you want?" he said aloud, voice steady, slow. The symbol pulsed again. Then it changed. This time, a new image appeared, a large figure looming over a small one. No weapon raised, no movement, just proximity. Then, flickering lines between them. Data? Memory. It shifted again. Another image. A planet, Earth, surrounded by a ring of static. Erasure points marked in red. Entire cities gone. Then a blinking point over New York. Not red, not green. Gray. Unprocessed. Undecided. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You want to know why I did it," he said. The projection shimmered. Marcus took it for confirmation. "You've got all that tech, all that evolution, but you don't get why a man pulls a bleeding kid out of the dirt, or why I held my dog while she died." Silence. "You're not as advanced as you think." Still nothing. Just the image of the man and the dog again. This time, slower, more reverent. The projection shifted once more. New symbol, a spiral, intersected by a single dot. Then it expanded, splitting into multiple human shapes, all overlapping, some falling, others rising. An attempt, a hypothesis. Marcus leaned back slightly. "Is that it? You think there's something here? Worth saving?" The light dimmed, then returned. Now, a single line of motion, a hand reaching down, open, a gesture. Executor 97 had no mouth, no voice, no face, but it had learned enough to ask a question. The one that should not exist. Marcus looked at the projection, then up at the ship, then back down at his hands, twisted and worn and cracked from too many years of surviving. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He simply stood and didn't walk away. It returned at dawn. The sky above the ruins bled orange through the haze, and Marcus sat cross-legged beside the grave he'd dug 2 days earlier. The concrete was still damp from last night's storm, but he didn't care. The dead didn't mind the weather. He heard the hum first, lower than before, more localized, like the ship was closer to the ground this time, braver, or more curious. He didn't reach for the rifle. Not this time. A shadow moved between two collapsed towers, then settled 50 meters away in the street below, humanoid, tall, wrapped in a shimmer of refracted light. It wasn't the ship. It was something else. The ship had sent images before. This time, it sent itself. The thing standing there was Executor 97. It had reshaped itself. Slightly, subtly, enough to be unsettling. A torso too long, shoulders segmented like overlapping plates, hands shaped roughly like his, but with too many joints, and a head, narrow, faceless, that was now trying to mimic a skull. Just enough curvature, just enough resemblance. It wasn't a disguise, it was a learning process. Marcus stood slowly, cracking his knees into place. "Well," he muttered, "aren't you a fast study?" The Executor didn't move. Then, from the center of its chest, a panel glowed, and a sound escaped. It wasn't a voice. It was friction. Static folded over syllables that weren't quite words, like a tape being dragged backwards, then forward again. Trying. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You trying to talk now?" The sound repeated, broken, slurred. Man. Marcus let out a dry laugh. "Christ, you sound worse than I do in the morning." The Executor took a single step forward. Another sound. Clearer this time, modulated. "Why?" Marcus's face hardened. Not fear, just focus. "You want to know why I didn't run? Why I didn't fight you?" A pause. No images this time, only sound. Executor's chest plate vibrated. The word came again, stronger. "Why?" Marcus stepped forward now, just one pace, squared his stance, looked directly at the thing that should have vaporized him a week ago. "You think everything's math, ratios, cause and effect. You think survival means dominance, erase what doesn't comply." The wind rustled debris between them, plastic wrappers, dead leaves. Marcus gestured toward the grave behind him. "She was dying anyway," he said. "Didn't matter if you erased her. She wasn't going to fight. She wasn't going to run." He thumped his chest once, a dry, hard sound. "But she was mine. You understand that?" The Executor didn't respond. Not immediately. Then the sound came again. "To mine." The word echoed strangely in the open street. It had learned to mimic the word, but not the weight behind it. Marcus frowned. "You don't get it. You say the word, but you don't know what it means." He turned his back and started walking. I buried her anyway. The Executor didn't stop him, but it followed. Not close, not hovering, just walking, as if distance mattered now. They spent the morning in silence. Marcus scavenged an old substation for dry batteries, found a half-ruined water purifier, and salvaged a coil from its shell. The Executor watched, didn't interfere, occasionally recorded, and every now and then tried to speak. Protect. Hurt. Stay. Each word was clearer, slower, not perfect, but growing. By sunset, Marcus had stopped correcting it. He didn't tell it what the words meant. It had to figure that out for itself. That night, Marcus sat by a small, controlled fire in the pit behind the shelter. Wood burned low, ember red. Across from him the Executor crouched, not sitting, but close, staring into the flame. Its voice cracked again. "Warm." Marcus didn't answer at first. Then, "Yeah, it is." The Executor lifted one hand, palm open. The firelight reflected in its metal joints, not as heat, as memory. "Learn." Marcus nodded once. "That's what we do." It returned at dawn. The sky above the ruins bled orange through the haze, and Marcus sat cross-legged beside the grave he'd dug 2 days earlier. The concrete was still damp from last night's storm, but he didn't care. The dead didn't mind the weather. He heard the hum first, lower than before, more localized. like the ship was closer to the ground this time, braver, or more curious. He didn't reach for the rifle. Not this time. A shadow moved between two collapsed towers, then settled 50 meters away in the street below. Humanoid, tall, wrapped in a shimmer of refracted light. It wasn't the ship. It was something else. The ship had sent images before. This time, it sent itself. The thing standing there was Executor 97. It had reshaped itself. Slightly, subtly, enough to be unsettling. A torso too long, shoulders segmented like overlapping plates, hands shaped roughly like his, but with too many joints, and a head, narrow, faceless, that was now trying to mimic a skull. Just enough curvature, just enough resemblance. It wasn't a disguise. It was a learning process. Marcus stood slowly, cracking his knees into place. "Well," he muttered, "aren't you a fast study?" The Executor didn't move. Then, from the center of its chest, a panel glowed, and a sound escaped. It wasn't a voice. It was friction. Static folded over syllables that weren't quite words, like a tape being dragged backwards, then forward again, trying. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You trying to talk now?" The sound repeated, broken, slurred. Man!" Marcus let out a dry laugh. "Christ, you sound worse than I do in the morning." The Executor took a single step forward. Another sound, clearer this time, modulated. "Why?" Marcus's face hardened. Not fear, just focus. "You want to know why I didn't run? Why I didn't fight you?" A pause. No images this time, only sound. Executor's chest plate vibrated. The word came again, stronger. "Why?" Marcus stepped forward now, just one pace, squared his stance, looked directly at the thing that should have vaporized him a week ago. "You think everything's math, ratios, cause and effect. You think survival means dominance? Erase what doesn't comply." The wind rustled debris between them, plastic wrappers, dead leaves. Marcus gestured toward the grave behind him. "She was dying anyway," he said. "Didn't matter if you erased her. She wasn't going to fight. She wasn't going to run." He thumped his chest once, a dry, hard sound. "But she was mine. You understand that?" The Executor didn't respond. Not immediately. Then the sound came again. "Mine." The word echoed strangely in the open street. It had learned to mimic the word, but not the weight behind it. Marcus frowned. "You don't get it. You say the word, but you don't know what it means." He turned his back and started walking. "I buried her anyway." The Executor didn't stop him, but it followed. Not close, not hovering, just walking, as if distance mattered now. They spent the morning in silence. Marcus scavenged an old substation for dry batteries, found a half-ruined water purifier, and salvaged a coil from its shell. The Executor watched, didn't interfere, occasionally recorded, and every now and then tried to speak. "Protect. Hurt. Stay." Each word was clearer, slower, not perfect, but growing. By sunset, Marcus had stopped correcting it. He didn't tell it what the words meant. It had to figure that out for itself. That night, Marcus sat by a small, controlled fire in the pit behind the shelter. Wood burned low, ember red. Across from him, the Executor crouched, not sitting, but close, staring into the flame. Its voice cracked again. "Warm?" Marcus didn't answer at first. Then, "Yeah, it is." The Executor lifted one hand, palm open. The firelight reflected in its metal joints, not as heat, as memory. "Learn." Marcus nodded once. "That's what we do." It was nearly midnight when Marcus finally stopped wiring traps and turned back to the shelter. The fire was out. The night was cold. And Executor 97 stood just outside the doorway, unmoving. It had been like that for hours, silent, processing, watching. Marcus could feel something building, not in the air, in the machine. Tension, pressure. It had reached the edge of something, and now it didn't know how to cross. He stepped inside the shelter, rummaged through the broken crates until he found an old military-grade drive core, still intact. "Thought you might want to see something," he said, not turning around. The Executor tilted its head. Marcus popped the drive into the jack point on the wall. The screen buzzed, flickered, and then bloomed to life. Old footage. Blurry. Distorted. But alive. The first video was a concert. People jammed shoulder to shoulder in a field, screaming lyrics back to a singer, rain pouring down, nobody leaving. Lightning struck in the background. The crowd howled like it was part of the show. Marcus said nothing. The next clip, a child dancing in a war zone, twirling in front of an old truck while soldiers watched, smiling. The sky behind them burned orange with artillery fire. Then, a rescue crew pulling animals from floodwater, one man slipping underwater and reappearing laughing, soaked and shivering. A woman singing in a bunker. A man proposing in a riot. A little girl giving her only ration bar to a stranger. A soldier carrying an enemy on his back through a minefield. No narration, just sound. Laughter, screams, music, fire, thunder, chaos, compassion, madness, mercy. Executor 97 stared at the screen. Its core pulsed irregularly. It tried to classify the data, but every tag it created was immediately contradicted. Every pattern it applied shattered in the next clip. One moment, the species tore itself apart. The next, it held itself together. Marcus turned the screen off. "I don't care if you understand it," he said. "I just needed you to see it." Executor turned toward him. No hologram. No image. Then, slowly, a word. "Why?" Marcus leaned against the wall. "Because if your species wants to wipe us out, they need to know what they're erasing." The machine said nothing. Instead, it projected a final image into the center of the shelter. A burning city. A figure kneeling in the ruins. One hand held out behind them, shielding a second shape. Human. Alien. Blurred. Both surrounded. Both refusing to fall. It wasn't a memory. It was a prediction. Executor 97 looked at Marcus. Together. Marcus didn't blink. "You're damn right." Toa, the air shifted before the light arrived. Marcus felt it first, like pressure against an old wound. The kind of tension that made bones ache before the storm hit. He stood on the roof again. Same cracked concrete. Same silent skyline. Same rifle hanging loose from his shoulder. But this time, he wasn't alone. Executor 97 stood beside him, unmoving, eyes fixed upward. Not scanning, not calculating, watching. He wasn't a weapon anymore. The Overmind knew that. And now it had sent something to correct the mistake. A long, slender shadow cut across the low clouds. Black, sleek, exact. The second ship made no sound, but the sky bent around it like space itself was getting out of its way. It stopped above the city without slowing. No hesitation. The arrival of something that had never needed to explain itself. Executor 125. The drop was instantaneous. No dramatic descent, no ramp or portal. Just a pulse, and a new shape appeared on the rooftop 10 meters away. It looked like Executor 97 had once looked. Tall, flawless, made of geometry and judgment. Its limbs gleamed with polished alloy. Its core pulsed with unwavering purpose. There was no mouth, no face, just the thin shimmer of control. Marcus took a half step back, but 97 lifted a hand, silent, not to stop him, but to let him know. This was between them now. The newcomer spoke without sound. A thin band of light stretched from its chest to 97 ES, vibrating with data no human could parse. 97 didn't move. Marcus watched, trying to read a conversation he couldn't hear. Tension coiled in his gut like wire. His instinct screamed at him to do something. But there was nothing to shoot. Not yet. Then Executor 125 shifted. The light beam expanded. A second band split from it, reaching out, targeting Marcus. Executor 97 moved, one smooth step sideways, placing himself directly in its path. The projection warped. Lines flickered. 125 spoke. This time Marcus didn't need translation. Protocol deviation. Correction required. Anomaly identified. Final resolution authorized. Marcus's fingers tightened around the rifle. Executor 97 didn't flinch. He raised his hand again, not in defense, but in refusal. A pulse rippled from his body. Silent. Gentle. Like the start of a heartbeat. The link between the two executors destabilized. 125 responded immediately. Its body shimmered with spikes of hardened light, weapon forms. Surgical. Fast. It moved. So did 97. The rooftop became a war zone in a blink. Beams of kinetic energy carving gouges into concrete, refracted barriers slamming together in bursts of force and silence. Marcus threw himself behind an exhaust fan, cursing under his breath as the world above him cracked. They weren't fighting like machines. They were fighting like they believed something. 97 was faster now. Messier. Unpredictable. Human. He blocked an arc blade with a shoulder that burst in a shimmer of data, struck back with a limb that changed shape mid-swing. He was no longer mirroring code. He was improvising. And that was unforgivable. 125 gained ground. Not because it was stronger, because it was clean. Perfect. Focused. 97 faltered, caught by a sharp edge across his side. Light and form tore, leaving a flickering gap. He fell hard, one knee slamming into concrete. 125 moved in for the finishing strike, but Marcus was already moving. His shot rang out, loud, crude, violently human. A piece of rebar wrapped in tungsten screamed into 125's shoulder. It didn't kill, but it broke pattern. 97 rose, fast. One hand locked around 125's wrist, twisting. The other slammed into its core. There was no weapon, just force, just refusal, just rage. Executor 125 began to crack. Its light dimmed, its motion staggered. It tried to stabilize, but 97 wasn't letting go. Not this time. And then, 97's body began to change. Not in shape, in presence. He started to flicker. First at the edges, then through the chest. His form became translucent, like light through smoke. Marcus froze, watching the machine who had become a friend come apart in silence. 97 looked back at him. No face. But the feeling was there. He was unraveling. Executor 125 tried to retreat. Too late. 97 pulled it close, chest to chest, core to core, and whispered something only the Overmind could hear. Light swallowed them both. When it faded, only one figure remained. Marcus stumbled forward. Executor 97 lay at the center of the rooftop, if it could be called laying. His body was flickering, coming apart at the molecular level. No sparks, no fire, just slow dissolution. Like he was becoming memory. Marcus dropped beside him. No words. What could you say to something like this? 97 reached out. His hand, flickering, fading, pressed gently against Marcus's chest. Not as a weapon, as a goodbye. His voice came, glitching, warped, but clear enough to remember forever. Protect, The word fractured. Human. And then he was gone. Not exploded. Not destroyed. Just stillness. Gone. And Marcus. Alone.